so much. We have a really interesting conversation. I'm so excited to have Tracy here with me today because you are doing something, you've been doing it for a long time, but right now it seems more relevant than ever. Right now there's a lot of conversations about making government work. And you have developed this incredibly innovative way of making that happen. Can you tell us about it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Linda, for having me here, and good morning to everyone. So I walk by City Hall Plaza almost every day to go to work. Our offices are just down on Washington Street, and it's just incredible how you've transformed this public space into a public square and having these community conversations. So I'm delighted to be here. Linda, you asked a great question around government, and I think this is the backdrop of our work in Pay for Success. And before I get into Pay for Success, I want to just set the stage on why this work matters. So I think we all agree that we live in probably the most incredible technological and social innovation of our time. Linda, you invoked Walter Isaacson, and I think he's absolutely right. Yet at the same time, in this period of some of the greatest wealth creation and technological innovation, we've never had this many people being left behind. And we all have traditionally looked to government to lift people out of poverty. It is in the realm of the public sector to think about social programs and to address these social inequities. And that's the social contract that we signed up, right? Yet, I think that, thinking about merging other movements to help government work better has been at the center of our work. Just a quick statistic. I think folks have heard of Peter Orszag, the former director of the Congressional Budget Office. He wrote in his famous book, Moneyball for Government, that of the $800 billion of the federal government spending on social programs, this is a staggering statistic, that only 1% has been shown to have delivered results for our vulnerable communities.
You came from the private sector. You wouldn't accept those results.
No, no, because how does the private sector work? You have a feedback loop. You develop something, you measure if it works or not. If it doesn't work, you iterate on your product or your service, and you do it again. Yet, despite the best intentions of our government partners, whether they are, fiscal reasons or cultural reasons, despite their best intentions, they're held back and often cannot focus on outcomes and results. So that's the backdrop of the work of Pay for Success, which is a nonprofit that I co-founded 7 years ago to bring this innovation to the United States.
Before we go deeper into Pay for Success, you have such a fascinating story. You were born in Hong Kong, you went to Harvard Business School, you were in the top tier consulting firms, and you pivoted. You took a risk and you became an entrepreneur starting something else. Can you tell us why?
First of all, I became an entrepreneur later than I hoped I had. Yes, Linda, I had been on this fairly predictable path. I came to this country as a foreign student when I was 14, came to Boston, and I've since called Boston my home. So like a good, dutiful Chinese daughter, I pursued the fairly predictable path. Study something practical, go and have a job that's fairly predictable, and this opportunity just presented itself right when I was turning 40, and I kind of late in life to be asking these questions, but I asked myself the question, what do I want to do for the rest of my career? Do I want to do something that's greater than the self? And nothing in my life prepared me to be an entrepreneur. And here I am 7 years ago starting a new organization, a nonprofit no less. And it's been some of the hardest work I've ever done, but also the most rewarding.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into Pay for Success and how that works, because it is an incredible innovation that you started here in Boston, but it is being applied to governments nationwide. So can you dive deeper into how it works?
Yes. So as I mentioned, Pay for Success sits at the center of two significant movements of our time. The first one I talked about government accountability, public accountability, but also where the Venn diagram also overlaps is where public accountability meets impact investing. I think folks are familiar with impact investing. This is an increasing desire to rethink the role of the capital markets in addressing social problems. So when we think about our investment portfolios, historically we've thought about, am I getting the right return for my money? Am I taking on the right amount of risk to get that kind of return? And then increasingly what we're seeing is that investors are also looking for a third dimension of their investments. In addition to risk and return, they're looking for impact. So it is really at the intersection of those two movements that Pay for Success was born. So let me describe very quickly how Pay for Success works, and then we can maybe get into an example if you think that's useful.
I would love that. So there was recently a profile, a quick five take in the Globe on Tracy and what it is, and there was a comment on the bottom saying, but I still don't understand. So if you could just make it, just break it down for us, because it is such a brilliant methodology.
Thank you. So Pay for Success starts with government, typically at the state level, wanting to use the tool to address a social problem or a policy priority. So I'll give a real example in Massachusetts, because we launched a project with Governor Baker earlier this summer. So the Massachusetts economy greatly relies on immigrants and refugees, these newcomers to our state, and I was one of them many, many years ago, for a lot of our industries. In fact, around 27% of our economy are made of workers who are immigrants or refugees. And in certain industries like hospitality, home health aid, and hospitals, that number is actually closer to 50%. Yet, when immigrants and refugees come to our state, they're faced with all kinds of barriers, not least English as a barrier. And as a result, these waiting lists, you should see these waiting lists, Linda, they're literally in the thousands and tens of thousands ranges. So Governor Baker wanted to use Pay for Success to address this need that immigrants and refugees faced, and look to Pay for Success and social finance to help him implement a program. So we raised $12.5 million of private capital. These are investors and philanthropists hoping to use their investment portfolio to make a difference. That $12.5 million go toward Jewish Vocational Service, an incredible nonprofit who's been in the business for 80 years delivering services to refugees and immigrants.
So you found the organizations that were already doing it successfully.
Exactly.
And you're applying your discipline of real metrics of success to a nonprofit world, which isn't used to that.
It's a completely different way of doing business with JVS. From the nonprofit's point of view, they've historically looked to two sources of revenue, right? Philanthropy, donations, and government contracts. And now for someone like a JVS to look to the capital markets and see a very different pathway to access growth capital to do their work is incredibly clarifying and inspiring. So the $12.5 million come from private investors. It goes to JVS as a grant to expand services to 2,000 more immigrants and refugees. But this is the catch, Linda. We have a contract with the state of Massachusetts, a Pay for Success contract, that basically says, as a result of this program funded by investors, the immigrants and refugees that we serve achieve a better economic mobility trajectory. So we measure their wages at the beginning and at the end of 2 years. So if we're seeing wage increases rise over time and they're going up the economic ladder, then the program is deemed successful and our investors would be repaid their principal and a modest rate of return. However, if we don't hit the marks and we don't hit the metrics set forth, then government doesn't owe anything and investors potentially stand to lose their money. So, hence the term Pay for Success.
So it is a win-win for the government. You are taking care of the citizens and of the targeted people that you're aiming to help, and they only reimburse you if you meet the metrics that you agree on in beforehand. And your investors who are putting in this initial amount of $12 million, how much of a return do they get?
All depends on the level of results that we achieve collectively. And that is actually one of the most elegant features of the tool, is to tie performance, social performance, with financial performance, and that investors only benefit if society does.
So it is not charity.
These are hard-minded investors. In fact, for this particular transaction, our lead investor was Prudential Financial. You can't get more institutional than that.
So this is an incredible innovation coming out of great financial minds here in Boston of how to apply this discipline to get results in a way that helped government and made government work. And I know that that's a big topic now. So after you proved it here, what happened?
So it really is remarkable to see how widespread and fast this movement has picked up. So for context, we got started in 2011, so it's merely 6 or 7 years. And the movement has gone not just nationwide, but globally. So in the United States, there are 18 Pay for Success projects channeling over $200 million, applying this technique to all kinds of social issues, in addition to workforce development, in health, in education, in early childhood, in serving our veterans. And globally, Linda, there are now 90 Pay for Success projects in 20 countries. So in this time of fiscal austerity, governments are looking to do more with less, and our investors are looking to express their values and their investment portfolio. So it really is a perfect moment for the tool.
Wow, this is really exciting. So how can other people get involved?
Well, spread the word. Despite the fact that this has really been becoming more and more mainstream, I think our government partners are still hearing it for the first time, and as a result,
talk to our political leaders, and if you have an idea, you can say, here's a new way where you can guarantee success, where you can show that government is working. Here's funding for it.
It's a really exciting public finance tool. We have a thriving municipal bond market to build bridges, to build roads, to have the means to take care of our physical infrastructure. This is a way to invest in our social infrastructure that can make government work better for our citizens.
So this is a unique public-private partnership that's happening now. It's sort of getting more exciting. Where do you see it going? Where's the future?
We've been very lucky that the tool has stayed very bipartisan. So in addition to doing projects in Massachusetts and New York and Connecticut and California, we're also working in South Carolina, Oklahoma, Idaho, and it really is incredible to see the embrace by government. Where do I see the future? I'm very optimistic about the future. I see a new world where finance can really be harnessed to serve society. I see a future where government thinks about their spending focused on impact for vulnerable citizens rather than using their gut instincts to make spending decisions. And I see a pathway for great nonprofits like JVS that I mentioned, see a new way to access capital to grow their work.
That is exciting. Are you doing projects with the federal government?
We have been very lucky to work with the federal government when we got founded. So the Obama administration was incredibly helpful in using its bully pulpit to lift this tool. We are also working very actively on the Hill. So in the current workforce bill and also the education bill, Every Student Succeeds Act, there are actually pay for success language embedded in those strategies. And we're actually helping shape a bill that's going through Congress right now to use, to create a pay for success fund that would be housed at Treasury.
This Pay for Success fund is a really exciting innovation that you started here, that you were able to expand. What in Boston made this the right place to start it?
Boston is just an incredible place. It's just the home of ideas. It was actually really interesting, Linda, you asked about my background, and my family, everyone lives in Hong Kong, and everyone's fairly commercially minded. No one in my family in Hong Kong understands what I do. And they always wondered, why did you choose Boston as your home? You've defected from Hong Kong, like literally everyone. I met a boy in Boston when I was in college, and that's the reason for me to make a life in this great city. But my mother would be like, why Boston? Why don't you live in New York? Or other places that they would be more familiar with, like Washington. And I think why Boston is such a great place is that while New York is very much defined by money, much like Hong Kong, or Washington is very much defined by information and policy, I think Boston is really defined by ideas. Ideas that cross all sectors, all disciplines. We have some of the most intellectual and greatest minds here. And if you really think about the Pay for Success tool, it really transverses across so many sectors, so many disciplines, and it's the intersection and commingling of great ideas that makes our work possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the impact that you're having here nationally and globally. What an inspiration. Thanks for sharing your story.